Hi, I'm Blair Malazdrewich, and this is Hot Wheels with a Z.
With a Z?
That's right, with a Z. I've always been fascinated by cars, and this show is how I'm going to learn more about cars, car culture, and the type of people who get involved and why. I have a car expert, so let's check him out. Rod Workington has always been into cars. Played with Hot Wheels as a kid and at 14 worked at a gas station. He started getting into the mechanical aspect, bought his first car, a 1974 Dodge Challenger, and rebuilt it himself. A few more rebuilt cars later, a quick break to get married and a career, then back to his car passions. One of his most notable is this. A replica of a 1966 Batmobile. Bottom line, he does it all because it's fun.
Well, the term car culture means to me is it means a love of cars, and it doesn't matter if you can afford to build them, if you can't afford to build them. It doesn't matter if you're into the old muscle cars or if you're into the new Fast and Furious type sets. I mean, it's one of those things that if you either have a love for it or you don't, and it doesn't really matter anymore. I mean, for me, car culture, I love cars. I love building them, and most people that build their own cars have a tendency to, once they've built it, they usually build something else. They don't just rest on one car, I find. So it's different for everyone, but for me, it's a love of cars. I love building. I love creating things like this. To me, it's fun. It's not really work.
Rod, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Blair?
Good to see you. Thanks for meeting me.
Hey, no problem.
You excited for this adventure?
I'm always excited about adventures like this.
Well, especially with me.
Especially with you.
We've met once before,
Yes,
so obviously
yeah, so this will be kind of cool.
go way back. It'll be entertaining.
Cool. You're buying lunch though, right?
Sure. So anyways.
I have it on camera.
Yeah, he's got it. So obviously we already introduced Rod, but Rod, tell us exactly what you have, the projects you're working on. We've seen the bat. The bat, of course, is amazing.
Okay.
But let's talk about something that's maybe not in such an amazing condition as this is.
Yeah, I got a few projects on the go right now.
Sure, let's go have a look.
I have.
All right, so as we walk through the yard, as I say, this is a gorgeous property that you live on. But I'm definitely the untrained eye. That's why you're here. I walk through here and I'm like, you just got a lot of looks like junk to me.
Yeah, my wife says the same thing.
But I feel like you're going to tell me why it's not. So let's talk about this right behind us.
Well, this year I picked up last fall. This is a 1967 Dodge Travco 25-foot RV that I absolutely fell in love with just because of the shape of it. And it runs.
Like body shape, not the condition.
Not the condition, no. This is going to be another one of those complete restorations. I'm going to probably end up hot rodding this thing up a bit, making it look way cooler than it does right now. Yeah, you know, we're replacing everything. We're gonna make this all brand new. This is actually, my wife wanted the RV, so this is what I ended up picking up for her. So this is her project.
Oh.
And she's been helping, but we're having a little clash of sometimes of what we want to do, because she's got a certain vision and I got a certain vision. But it's really great because it's a project we can do together.
That's cool.
And it's something that she really wants to do. She really wants to see something like this.
So she's on board. There's just some design differences, let's say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have certain ideas what I want to do, and she's got completely different ideas.
So how important is it when you see something like this to be able to see the potential?
That's the thing. Well, it's like when I see, like I'm looking at this thing, most people would look at this and say, well, this is pretty much garbage. I can visualize the finished product as soon as I see a vehicle. I know exactly what I'm going to do to it right from the start.
All right, so Rod, I want to take a look at this one because this is one of the few older kinds of cars that I could recognize. I mean, they still make Corvettes, but ever since I was a kid, I could tell a Corvette right away. Now, I don't know a lot about them, but I'm pretty certain, you don't have to be an expert to say that something is missing from this general area of the car. Well, what is going on?
It's a work in progress, actually. What it is?
I hope so.
Yeah, no, it is, definitely. What it is, it's a 1973 Corvette, numbers matching car that I ended up picking up.
Whoa, that's a term, numbers matching.
Numbers matching, which means that everything on the car is original to what the car was originally from factory.
Okay.
Whenever you hear that terminology, the motor, the transmission, everything is all original. And I ended up picking this thing up to do a restoration on it, and I have most of it done. I mean, right now, this is I got to put this back on the body.
Yeah.
And put the front end back on, and believe it or not, I'll have this thing ready hopefully in about 4 months, ready to go on the road.
Wow.
That's
so you
the
have
plan.
Half a car, and in 4 months you'll have a full car.
I will. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. That'll be awesome. I'm excited.
You know, I actually ended up buying this thing and told another car buff what I had bought, and the next day he ends up asking me if I want to double my money. He was gonna, and I wouldn't have to
like
touch
this. He was gonna double his money.
But it's a '73 Corvette. I have to do this one.
Well, it's like 7/3 of a Corvette.
Yeah, thanks. This is a 1974 Dodge Challenger that I got for next to nothing. Actually, I got a couple of these. I got a parts car as well. The plan on this car is actually what I want to do is I'm not going to restore this one back to original because
So it's not going to be a Charger.
A Challenger.
That's what I said.
Yes, I know you did. Okay, we'll get you figured out.
Who needs editing?
Yeah, no. But what we're gonna end up, what I want to do with this one is I don't want to put it back to original because I want to do something different with this one. So way back in the early 70s, Dodge came out with a concept car called the Dodge Diamante.
Okay.
Which was
They make pineapples, right?
Yes.
Oh no, that's Del Monte.
Yeah,
Okay.
Del Monte. So what they ended up doing was they wanted to compete with the Corvette that we just saw. Okay. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to try to replicate the Dodge Diamante. And if it all works out, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be great. If not, I will end up with a car that looks really weird. For the most part, I don't find it to be work. It's just a matter of finding the time to actually get down and get to it to get stuff finished. I did promise my wife that I'm going to finish one other car before I start the next one.
Oh, well, that's good.
That's the plan now. So.
All right, well, now that's on camera.
Yeah, I know.
Where are we headed to next?
Well, we're going down the road a bit to see a buddy of mine who's an old Mopar guy. Not that he's old, but he's into old Mopars.
Okay.
And he ended up picking up this really rare early 80s Trans Am convertible.
Okay. Nice. You always hear, I hear the term Trans Am a lot. What was so great about the Trans Am in general?
Trans Am was just basically an upgraded version of your basic Firebird or Camaro and things like that. A little bit, few extras put in there, a little bit more decked out. Just a more expensive version of your base model. The neat thing about it is growing up, when I was growing up, was watching Burt Reynolds drive one in the Smokey and the Bandit movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, I'm too young, and you're too old.
Well, you're always going to be too young, unfortunately. See.
What was cooler, the Trans Am or Burt Reynolds' mustache?
Burt Reynolds' mustache was definitely the coolest part about that whole movie, and with the car and everything, and him driving in it.
So, how did you meet this guy? Have you seen him in shows, or have you?
Pat, I met through a friend of mutual friends, and we met. We've done a couple of car shows together and stuff like that. And he's got some really interesting stuff, and he's got this real passion for these old cars and everything, which is just you don't see as much these days, right? And it's all that late 70s, early 80s muscle, which is what his big passion is, what he's really, really into, right? So it's neat. When you see his shop, I think you're going to be a little bit surprised.
All right, I'm excited. Ooh, I should put both hands on the wheel.
Yeah, maybe. And don't forget that little special blinky thing that tells you when you can turn.
Oh, yeah, the signal.
Yeah, the
I
signal.
use that sometimes. Sometimes I
This is Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, just so everyone in Winnipeg knows, this is called a signal.
Yes.
And then when you're done turning, you shut it off.
Yes, and you know got to refill it with blinker fluid every once in a while. You got to check the levels.
Yeah, you got to check your and my horn fluid as well.
Yeah, horn fluid is always important too, because people don't check that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I need a new Johnson rod.
Yep.
What's a Johnson rod? I don't know, just make stuff up.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about cars too, is another great reason to learn about cars is so you're not getting taken for a ride when you go to a mechanic, because literally they could tell me anything and I would be like, yeah, I need new tomato spark plugs or giggly pins.
Giggly pins are always an important part of your car. If they're not new and if they're not clean, I mean, that just I can't understand why people don't change them more often.
No one likes a dirty giggly pin.
No.
That's not a real thing. But the thing, what I find fascinating about car repairs in general is like, sometimes it's just like getting to what needs to be fixed is where your cost is, right? Because if they have to lift the engine up and they have to move it around, how do you deal with that when you're fixing a car? Do you have to have all the equipment to be able to lift an engine? Do you borrow? Do you buy? Do you?
Well, it depends on how strong your friends are. I mean, it's a little bit different now, than it was back then. The equipment's easier to get now. You can go to your local store. You can buy this stuff. It's fairly inexpensive for the home use. I mean, it's not as heavy duty as you'd find in a commercial garage, but it's readily available now.
Yeah.
Where before, when I was doing this, when I was a kid, we had to almost make this stuff up.
Yeah, they had to like lift the horse and then put it in front of the buggy.
That's right.
And
yes.
then,
yeah.
Okay. Yes, I recall that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. A lot of those things were only available in garages. So now you can go to like your local store and grab a hoist.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
A hoist. Yeah.
A joist?
Yeah. You pick up an engine crane. You can pick up, a good floor jack nowadays for $100 or something like that.
Oh wow! Oh, okay.
Which is really cheap now, and some jack stands, and you're all good to go. You're set now.
Oh, okay, I pictured it being a lot more complicated than that. Well, because every time I see this stuff, I only see it in a garage, like in like a professional mechanic's garage, not your local person's garage.
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much pick up whatever you want now. It's all out there. You can even go to some commercial stores and rent the tools, especially if they're specialty tools. You can actually go rent them for the day, go use them, put them back. And the wonderful thing now is when I was doing this, I had to rely on friends, professionals, asking advice. And nowadays, you just have something called the YouTube.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, that you young kids are all into.
Us young kids.
Yeah, no, YouTube is absolutely wonderful. If you want to figure out or find out something, YouTube it. You can probably do just about anything.
So one thing there was just an unusual car that passed. You guys probably didn't see it, but it doesn't matter. The one thing I was going to talk about, though, that it made me think of, I remember hearing about, there were cars that were original cars, but then there were kit cars. What is a kit car? Is that a car that you can order and then you just build it?
Basically, a kit car is you would, depending on what type of kit, there's hundreds of them out there.
Okay.
Hundreds of them. It depends on your level of ability, for one thing. It's huge. But you can buy almost anything, and you build it on a car that you already own.
Oh.
You basically take the body off and you put a new body on.
Oh, okay.
And that's pretty much it. Do the body work, paint it up, and make it look good.
Oh, see, I thought they rebuilt everything. I thought you guys built those from the ground up.
No. Some have to be on a custom frame, custom chassis, and everything like that. But a lot of them are just they're back in my day, VWs, little Volkswagen Bugs, Fieros were very popular to build kit cars onto. And for a fraction, like 10% of the cost of, let's say, a Lamborghini Countach, you could have a fake one.
Oh, nice.
Kind of like, how you instead of buying the really expensive designer jeans, you buy the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like electronics.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
Electronics. I bought a Sorny.
A Sorny,
and a Ragnasonic. Those are very good. They had a 20-minute warranty.
Yep.
Hopefully your kit car is better than that.
Yeah.
Now, what's the difference between a kit car and like those people who add like the super large bumpers or the super large, is it called ground effects?
The ground effects are a whole bunch of different things. You could put lighting in it and everything like that. It's add-ons to you put on your car.
It's just accessories.
It's just accessories.
What about like in James Bond? Can I get like the rocket launcher?
You probably could.
You get arrested.
You probably would. You'd probably have to find an arms dealer somewhere that would sell you this stuff.
Well, good thing we live in Canada because we know a lot of those.
So, yeah, you can. It all it goes all to your level of ability.
So one thing I was going to talk about too, since we talked about, obviously, please don't put a rocket launcher in your car. That's not what I'm suggesting, and you would get in trouble from the police. But I had headlights burn out in a city when I was traveling in the States, and they asked me about what kind of bulbs I wanted, and they said, well, some of them are actually like, you'll get pulled over. What are some of the banned things? Like, I know in Canada, is there a tint? Like, you only have a certain level of tint in your car. What are some of the weird maybe rules that people don't know about accessories on a car?
Well, I mean, there's
I'm sure there's many.
There's so many regulations out there to deal with cars. I mean, if you're building a certain car, you can't have an open wheel concept car, which, like the old 32 Roadsters with no fenders on the wheels.
Yeah.
You can't do that, especially not here.
Why is it? Because it's so
well, it's dangerous. You have an exposed wheel. I mean, anything could touch the top of that thing and get pulled in. I'm assuming that it's basically a safety issue.
Yeah.
That's slowly starting to change. I know that in BC they've changed it in the last 6 months. But again, anything, if you build a car and it doesn't have wiper blades, if your car doesn't have a heater, if your lights aren't visible, if
like those ones where it looks like they have eyes where they close down.
Exactly. If you have a blower motor pop through your hood, that has to actually be set at a certain height.
Oh, really?
Because if it's an obstruction. It's an obstruction. Again, it's another safety issue. There's tons of things that you got to go through. Anybody that's going to go out and build a car, before you do it, make sure you research, find out exactly what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. Because if you build something, and it might be the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen in your life, if you can't put it on the road, then what's the point in having it?
Okay, well, let's check out this guy's place. You told me it's good. Are you excited?
You know what? I haven't been here. I've never actually been here. I've heard stories about it, but I've never actually been here. So I'm really excited right now.
It was because I was almost born in the front seat of a car just like this. My mom and dad were racing to the hospital in downtown Winnipeg, the Women's Pavilion as it was called then, and about 10 minutes after they got there, I kind of came into the world. So I think it was through osmosis, and then a show called The Dukes of Hazzard, probably around 1980, that really got me into cars because of the 1969 Charger. So I've always liked Chrysler products, but I've been fortunate to have had many over the years, and it's just something that I've grown up with for the most part. So this is a 1967 Dodge Dart 270 two-door hardtop. This was called a Sport Compact model back in 1967. This is an almost identical replica of the car my father bought brand new in May of 1967, and then a year later in May of '68, I was born. I remembered going on the long summer car trips with this car, pulling the camper behind it in the mid-70s, and learning how to drive in the early 80s in it. So my dad's had an entire red interior. This one has a two-tone white and red interior. It's really neat though. It's a nice color combination. What's really interesting about this car is the original car my dad had got really rusty, and I ended up in 1992 just taking all the good parts off of it, and we sent it to the crusher. I've always regretted that, and I saved some of the good parts, and I thought, well, one day I'll build another one for him. Flash forward to 2004, and this was for sale at a local car show. It was red with black wall tires, and as it turns out, a gentleman that bought a bunch of parts off me years ago had some of the parts on the car. When I saw the car for sale, he said, "Pat, it's," whatever his name was, he just said, "Pat, I'm the guy who bought those parts off you. This is your dad's grill." And right then I knew this was the right car to build because I wanted to give it to my father as a Christmas present. One really cool little thing about the car is my father always talked about the little white Dodge Dart we had that he bought at Century Motors on Main Street. So when I redid the car, built the car, I even duplicated the Century Motors decal. They had a Century Motors nameplate because I wanted my father on Christmas morning to take off the car cover, see white sheet metal and Century Motors, because right away he would know 67 Dodge Dart. And the first thing he said was, 67 Dodge Dart, ours had a cracked taillight, this one doesn't have a cracked taillight. And it was in my top 10 list of things I've ever done in my life. So this car will never be sold. I'm hoping my 5-year-old son will one day have some fun with it. It's 50 years old now. It's amazing to think it's that old, but again, it's just sentimental. My dad's no longer with us, but I love having the car around. It reminds me of him and times when I was a child. So it's a pretty cool car. I've had several Challengers. I've had B-bodies, the larger wheelbase cars. I've had a couple of those. I really like the Dodge Darts. They feel a little bit smaller, a little bit more amble and sleek, and they're just a lot of fun, especially the convertibles. I mean, I love bringing old beat up stuff back to life. And the whole thing about restoring a car is I also like researching the history of a car, because every car has got a history. And when you find out some of that history and through research find one of the old owners and actually talk to them if they're still around, if they have some pictures, it's just like striking gold. So one of my cars, the Purple Challenger convertible, was ordered with a split bench seat, and it arrived with bucket seats. And I was able to interview the original owner who factory ordered it, and I said, well, why did you order a split bench? He said, it was 1970, man, you get more girls in the car. So I mean, just little nuggets like that of information you find out, and it's part of the folklore of the car.
Hey Pat, how did you come across this particular car? Because we know this is a rare car, because I've never seen a Trans Am that is convertible.
And it's funny, at car shows, people look at it and then look at me and say, they didn't make these in convertibles? And I'm like, well, they did and they didn't. The short story is anyone could walk into a GM dealership in 1980, 81-ish and say, I want to get a Trans Am or Firebird convertible, even a Camaro convertible, and you could order one. And then this was basically diverted from the factory. This was built in Norwood, Ohio. It was diverted from the factory to what was called a coach builder. And it had the roof cut off, a whole bunch of welding done underneath to shore up the frame so that the car didn't break in half. And then it was delivered to the dealership, and it was sold with full GM warranty, in this particular case for $8,000 over the retail price. So this car retailed for about $21,000 in 1981, and that's why a doctor owned it, because that was a lot of money for a car back in 1981, certainly more than probably a Corvette at the time. It was probably up there with a Cadillac or a Lincoln type of price point. So that's what's rare about the car. They didn't make many of them because at that price they weren't selling a ton of them. The company in Michigan actually had a partnership with a West Coast company called American Convertible Corporation, and that was the marketing arm, because you're going to sell a lot more of these in California than you're going to than in Michigan or the East Coast, where it snows for many months of the year. So at the end of the day, very few of these were built. You don't see many of them out there. We have since brought another one to town from Toronto that my friend purchased. There was another one for sale in Saskatchewan earlier this year. And there's a couple of Pontiac forums out there that I've seen, there's a handful of these that exist in Canada. What I don't know is, were they just built at that Michigan company, or were there other conversion coach builders where they were built? There probably was. But that's what I'm having a hard time finding, is just where else they might have been converted. Were they converted in Canada, for instance, being sold at a Canadian dealership? This particular car was sitting on the showroom floor of Hillside Motors in Charlottetown, PEI. There was a red one and a black one. I've talked to the doctor who bought it brand new. He said the black one just looked better than the red one, and he bought it. In fact, he said this car was used in the 1981 Charlottetown Homecoming Parade. It's a festival they have every year, and this was used in that parade. This car was also owned by a Pontiac salesman. He was a top 10 GM salesman, lived in Dartmouth, and he was a big Pontiac collector as well. And then he sold it to a husband and wife that I bought it off of. It lived most of its life in the East Coast, and it ended up in Florida for a couple of years as this couple's kind of daily driver, or their winter car, so to speak, in Florida.
Their retirement car.
This was their retirement car, yeah. It has 58,000 original kilometers on it. It's never seen winter. That's what's amazing about it. Except for one repaint, it's basically all original. It drives like it's original. It's nice and tight. And with that kind of low mileage on the car, it does drive nice and tight because it hasn't been taken apart. It doesn't have 200,000 miles on it, which just makes cars rattle and squeak and things like that. So it's a joy to drive. And with grandmother's cloth seats here, it literally feels like you're driving down a highway in grandmother's couch.
Well, that about does it for this episode of Hot Wheels with a Z. Until next time, keep your tires on the road. Keep your wheels on the concrete. Don't go crazy. Same car time, same car channel. Until next time, vroom vroom.